just a quick little overview about me. I'm Jackie Secchiori. I am a health and fitness coach. I'm a qualified personal trainer, and I decided to kind of go down the route of specializing in menopausal ladies because I started to see a lot of midlife women who were stopping exercising, and I wanted to help them to keep moving. And a lot of women were stopping because they didn't feel well. Either they were fatigued or they had sore joints, muscle aches, joint pains. And it just made me a little bit sad, really. And I wanted to help as many women as I could to feel better, help with those joint pains and aches, and to keep moving. What I also found was that a lot of women were doing things to make those joints, those aches and pains worse. And there were kind of simple things that they could do to make things a little bit better. So that's kind of what I want to share with you today. My kind of journey in a very quick recap was that I was an older mom. I had a child at 41, and I started going through my perimenopausal symptoms about 2 to 3 years after I gave birth to her, and I blamed it all on baby hormones, post-baby hormones, until a friend mentioned the word perimenopause, which I was very shocked about, and looked it all up and started researching and found that I myself was doing the kind of exercise to make things worse. I was exercising at the wrong time of day, which meant I couldn't sleep very well. And then I obviously started to look a little bit more detail into the nutritional side, the sleep, the stress. And then I took a little online qualification with a company called Burrell Education, which was basically helping what they called third age women. What I will cover, I will go through very, very briefly, because I did this in the previous one, the stages of menopause. How does menopause affect the female body? And then we are going to look at, can and does menopause cause joint pain? And what we'll look at is about 7 different things that can cause common causes of joint pain, one of which can be hormonal and the rest of which might not be. And so what I want you to kind of go through today is to reflect on what I'm going through and reflect on what's going on with you as I talk about it. I want you to have a much better understanding of what's going on with you, with your life. We're all individual. We all have different issues going on at the moment, and be able to choose these small changes from tomorrow, basically. So let's just have a quick look at these stages of menopause, which we've gone through before. As we know, menopause doesn't happen in one day. There is no magical date on which, will appear on the calendar that will say, woo, I'm now in menopause. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, and it happens in stages. And the definition of menopause is that you have not had a period for 12 months. So a year of not having a period, that's obviously a long time. So you might not have a period for 10 months, then you have one, you're still not in menopause. But obviously, way prior to that, women are starting to notice things about their body that are changing. Their periods may be changing, the mood. They might get joint pain, weight gain, not sleeping, maybe a loss of confidence or feeling more anxious. They just don't feel themselves anymore, becoming forgetful, thinking we're losing our minds, which we discussed in the last webinar. Maybe some women have no changes to their cycle at all, but are getting some symptoms. So don't put that link together. So you don't necessarily have to be having irregular periods to be having symptoms. Or it might be like me, that you just thought it was post-baby hormones because you're in your 40s. So I think what we need to realize is that, there are lots of years that lead up to that menopausal date where we can be having lots of changes going on in our bodies, and it can be 4 years, 6 years, anything up to 10 years before we actually have that final period. And so it's really in these stages that we need to focus and act now, so that when that day comes that we haven't had that period for 12 months, we're in the best possible health and we're doing the best possible things for our health and wellness that we can. What I suggest to women and kind of say to them is to have some kind of a way of tracking. Even though your periods might be regular, you might go from, say, a 28-day cycle to a 23-day cycle. That's what happened to me for about 2 years. And then I started to miss ones. And what's a really good thing to do is to kind of try and track any symptoms that you might be having to those cycles so that you can see whether it is all hormonal or whether it's due to something else that might be going on. So it's a really, really good idea to have some kind of a tracking system. There's absolutely loads of them, apps or things, or, you know, you could go old school, write it down, put it in your diary, whatever you want. There's lots of different things that you can do. So how does menopause affect the female? I also went through this in the last seminar. We talked about that there are 3 sex hormones. We've got estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, and they all start to fluctuate. Some of them might drop quite rapidly while others don't. So we can have a situation where they're just totally out of balance. And I think obviously our little main player of estrogen has over 400 different functions in the female body. And what happens as we start to lose our egg reserve is the follicles start to age, and we have a little connection that goes between the brain and the ovaries. And that I want you to think of it as a little motorway. It starts to get weaker. That connection starts to get weaker, and the body doesn't really know what's going on. And these estrogen receptors are absolutely everywhere in the body, but they are kind of concentrated, which is why we have the symptoms where we do in the brain, in the breast. So a lot of women can have really painful breasts. In our heart, some women get heart palpitations, in the liver, in our uterus. So we get a lot of women have kind of few UTIs, vaginal issues, painful sex, even affect your bowel. Your digestive tract is affected as well. So some women become a lot more sensitive to foods that they've never been sensitive to before. And of course, bone estrogen is very, very bone protective. So there's a lot going on. And obviously what we're going to focus on is how that estrogen affects our bones, joints and muscles. We also have progesterone, which is kind of, it comes out when you're or in large amounts when we're pregnant. It's that kind of anti-anxiety. It prepares the body for pregnancy. It really affects our brain function. It promotes a feeling of calmness. It helps you sleep at night. It relaxes the brain. It also relaxes all your joints so that we can stretch and make room for the baby. So it helps with the smooth muscles, and it can help with pain tolerance. We also have testosterone. Everyone thinks it's a male hormone, but we do have it too. It's really important for bone strength, development of lean tissue. It contributes to this overall sense of well-being and energy levels, and also helps with a healthy libido. So lots and lots of things going on in our body as these things start to fluctuate. So can menopause cause joint pain? So what I want to talk about is what is happening through the hormones and how they do affect our joints and our bones and our muscles, and why you might be feeling joint pain. But also I want you to think about the other things that we talk about, and do any of those things resonate with you? And they might sound really simple, but when you look at them in context with what's happening with our hormones as well, and declining hormones, you might realize that there's little simple things that you can actually do. And the thing is, I want women to enjoy their fitness in menopause, and suffering from joint pain is really difficult. So I'm doing this to help you to heal your joints. And that's what the webinar is all about, to put some strategies into place so that you can help to heal those joints. So if you've been active, we need to understand the impact of menopause on our muscles and joints. As I said, I want to give you an overview of strategies and solutions, but this is not to replace any advice that you might have had from a professional that you might be seeing about any issues that you might be having about your joints. It's not to replace that. It's just to give you some strategies that you might be able to use. So while aches and pains and joint stiffness are kind of inevitable as we get older, as we approach menopause, I think many women are often surprised to discover that this joint pain is one of the most common symptoms, alongside hot flushes, night sweats, period changes, mood swings, brain fog. And it was one of the things that a lot of the women mentioned when I specifically asked what top 3 things are affecting you and your menopause journey. It was all about the mood and the brain issues, whether that was anxious or angry or rage. And then the second one was the joint pain, which is why we have kind of, done the webinars that we have, because they were the top things that people asked for. The average age for menopause in the UK is 51. So we're kind of going to be going through this journey, or we can start going through this journey if you're in your early 40s. if you're going through kind of natural menopause. But I think a lot of people might put that the aches and pains and joints down to aging, and it's not necessarily always about that. What we find, and what I found, is that the joints that are involved in like high impact movements, such as the hips and the knees, tend to be most affected, but it can come anywhere. My elbows are starting to ache at the moment. Neck, shoulders, hands, fingers, all these things can be affected by joint pain. So feeling, what does it feel like? It's kind of like an achy, stiff, a creaky feeling. Sometimes it's worse in the morning, and experiencing, sometimes women experience like a burning sensation around the joints. And they are typical symptoms of menopausal joint pain. Like I said, might be worse in the morning and get better as the day continues. And that's probably because you're moving around. Whilst pain can be localized to specific joint areas, many women also describe it as just a feeling of aching all over. I'm just aching all over. So some women also, quite surprisingly, sometimes mention and report that old injuries from childhood or more recent injuries have known to start ache again, or old injuries have kind of come back to haunt them. So as time goes on, you might notice that more aches and pains in those areas, if you've ever injured those areas, than you used to as well. So maybe, if you do have sore hips or a sore knee or a sore ankle, it might be worth just looking back and thinking to yourself, did I injure that as a child? Have I injured it recently? Because that could be one of those reasons. Oops. Okay. So common causes of joint and muscle pain. We've got the hormonal changes, dehydration, stress, weight gain, diet, sleep, and exercise. And I'm going to try, if I'm speaking very fast, to get through all of them. So we naturally lose a small percentage of muscle as we age. From around the age of around 30, we can start to lose muscle at the age of around 2% a year. And when menopause comes into play and the declining hormones can accelerate your loss of muscle mass, which affects your metabolism, your power, your strength, your balance, and your aerobic capacity. So all of these things are affected. Of course, bones are affected too. And what we have to remember is that we burn fat in our muscle, and healthy muscle helps to preserve a good metabolic rate. Kind of small changes in our exercise can have like a strong ripple effect on the body. It can stimulate metabolic pathways, it can improve glucose uptake, which of course, is good for the sugar and the diabetes. Help improve fat oxidation and regenerating muscle. And as I mentioned about the bone, which is super, super important, this is a living tissue and it regenerates constantly. And these like dynamic powerhouses are really, really complex. Once we're in our 30s, again, bone remodeling starts slowing down. And there's generally no further mineralization after about the age of 35. So we have to protect our bones to maintain what we've got. And especially as once we're postmenopausal, these hormonal changes will cause like a further loss of mineral from the bone. And that's because estrogen promotes the activity of something called osteoblasts, which are cells that produce bone. And when estrogen levels drop during menopause, the osteoblasts are not able to effectively produce bone as well as they did before. And quite frighteningly, worldwide, 1 in 3 women will experience an osteoporotic fracture, which is, it gets quite scary as we hit over the age of 50. So that's what happens with the bone. Joints are basically where 2 bones meet. They're covered with cartilage, which helps them to move smoothly across each other, and it keeps our movements fluid. And within that, we have something called synovial fluid, and that's found in the cavities of our joints to reduce the friction between the cartilage of these synovial joints during movement. And as we age, this synovial fluid becomes a little bit more sticky. So I want you to think of it as like a little bit, it turns a bit glue-like. And the cartilage breaks down over time. This can be accelerated, of course, by injury or damage, and then joint pain can develop. As you reach menopause, our levels of estrogen again are declining, and we need to be mindful of our joints and our tendons because they have as well as everywhere in the body, but they are kind of concentrated in those joints. And a bit like what Catherine said last week, they work like this lock and key. And the role of estrogen is healing and repairing. So if we are like basically just going gung-ho at the exercise and not giving them time to repair and heal, they're just going to become more and more inflamed. So menopause also kind of causes changes in joint lubrication. Estrogen is responsible for regulating fluid levels in the body, and therefore, if levels of estrogen are low, the body becomes less able to hold water, which can affect hydration and lubrication of the joint tissues and the skin, which is why we start to get a little bit dry. And this includes cartilage, ligaments, and tendons. And so this is protective. You know, estrogen is protective of our joints, of our tendons, of our cartilage, of our bones. And when this kind of protective and supportive nature is impaired, this again can cause aches, pains, and stiffness to develop. So there's lots of things going on here. Estrogen also has a role in helping to turn over our collagen, and it protects the membranes. And this means that as we were younger, we can kind of work, those joints and muscles can work until failure. But if we continue to do too much repetitive exercise on those joints and don't have enough healing, then it can lead to inflammation, as with anything. So it's kind of just being mindful of what are you doing to your joints. Are you jumping around a lot, doing lots of pounding on the roads? Are you doing lots of running and you've got sore hips? Just being mindful really of what are you doing at the moment. Estrogen also acts as an antioxidant in the joints, which helps to prevent inflammation, and also helps to our muscles and our tendons to repair. So as it disappears, as we start to get lower levels of estrogen, you might start to feel pain because that protective factor of the anti-inflammatory has kind of disappeared. Not altogether, but you know, it won't be there anymore. So this can also be a factor in joint pain. So I think we need to be mindful of these changes, that a lack of estrogen affects joint lubrication, it affects collagen turnover. We need estrogen to help with our inflammation, and so it helps with healing and repairing. So our joints, changes in menopause, our joints will become stiffer. We don't have the same collagen turnover. We don't have the same healing as before, which means that if you're doing those high intensity kind of exercises, you need to spend a lot more time giving yourself a little bit of rest and recovery. And that needs to become just as important as the exercise you're doing, especially if you've got sore joints and painful joints. We also need sleep for healing, which many women aren't really aware of. That's when we heal, when we're in bed at night and asleep. So if you're not sleeping well, that can also be affecting your joints. And just to be aware, as it mentions here on the left about osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, and fibromyalgia, don't just think, oh, I've just got achy joints and it's fine. You know, muscle and joint pain can regress into fibromyalgia, which is prevalent in postmenopausal women. So if you've got restless legs, muscle and joint pain, and they aren't resolving, if you've tried lots of things to help, then it is advised to visit your doctor, because this can, you know, those kind of things can be a precursor to fibromyalgia, which is like an autoimmune condition, where pain can become chronic. And we kind of don't want that. So don't ignore it if you've tried all these things and things are not working. If joint lubrication is one of the things that we need to consider, then we really need to think about our hydration. I can't tell you how important water is, not just for the joints, but for so many different things, which I could talk about for ages. But up to 80% of the cartilage that we have in our joints is water, which makes it very important, you know, a very important component. It's also a natural part of the synovial fluid, which I mentioned earlier, that kind of gel-like liquid that lubricates the cartilage and helps the joints move around without friction. So really, really important that we're drinking enough water. Water is also needed to support the flexibility and the elasticity of ligaments and tendons. So ligaments connect one bone to the other bone, and they're needed to stabilize the joints. and tendons connect your muscles to the bones. And when these ligaments and tendons lose their flexibility or elasticity, your kind of range of motion can start to be reduced. So you might find you can't move your shoulders as much as you could. You have a restriction in that range of motion. And the other thing we really need to consider is, without enough water, obviously we can't lubricate the joints. But what we really need to think about is, are you having night sweats? Are you having hot flushes? Are you, because if you're sweating a lot in the night and then you're waking up with really stiff joints, one of those reasons could be because of the night sweats and because of the lack of water. So, dehydration can have such a negative impact on the joints. So one of the first things I would do is check whether or not you're drinking enough water. You should be drinking around 1.5 to 2 litres of just plain water. That doesn't include tea and coffee a day, and probably more if you're exercising, definitely more if it's 29 degrees like today. And if your joints are sore or creaky first thing in the morning, and then it eases off as the day goes on, then it might mean that you're becoming dehydrated at night. So maybe having a glass of water about an hour before bed might be able to help with that. And obviously, first thing in the morning, don't go and get the coffee, drink the water. Okay, rehydrate with water. And as I said, really important if you're having those night sweats. So just want to put in there, because it's so important for the joints and the skin and the collagen and everything, are you drinking enough water? Stress can have a negative effect on your health. If you're experiencing lots of stress, then your body will release high levels of the hormone cortisol. This works as an inflammatory agent, especially when it's present long term. So inflammation increases, inflammation in the joints will also increase, and this can make the joint pain worse. Stress can also cause you to be tense, when we're maybe sat here and we're doing this and not even aware of it, or leaning forwards with the shoulders, all that kind of posture stuff where you're stressed, you tense the muscles. This can also make it more difficult for the joints to work and can cause, further inflammation and further discomfort as well. So it's really important that if you do experience stress and you're aware that you're stressing, you're tensing your body, try and do some form of relaxation every day, whether it's a few stretches, whether it's just bringing up the shoulders, relaxing the jaw, the forehead, all these places where we tend to hold our stress levels. But that can also be a factor. So 3 things we've covered: hormonal changes, are you hydrating, are you stressed? What's next? Weight gain. So excess weight obviously will put additional pressure on our weight-bearing joints, especially around the knees and the hips. A lot of people moan about the knees as we get older. Don't worry, mine creak too. And according to arthritis.org, every pound of excess weight exerts about 4 pounds of extra pressure on the knees. So we really need to be just mindful of, have you gained loads of weight over the last year, 2 years? Is that having effect on the joints as well? And as we know, unfortunately, weight gain is all too a common problem in menopause. That's a whole new webinar. Just having a real thought really about, have you put lots of weight on? Could that be a factor as to why your joints and muscles and things are aching as well? Just having a little time check. Oh, it's doing okay, half an hour. Next, diet. I might just put Catherine on here. No, I'm kidding. So obviously things that we eat can either help or hinder joint pain. And as I just mentioned, mainly kind of sugary, high processed foods can trigger inflammation. And if we've already got inflammation in the joints from other things, and we've also lost that beneficial anti-inflammation of estrogen, we really need to start looking at other things. And there is so many things that we can have in our diet that can help with inflammation. And, like I said, it isn't just sugary foods. High salt, processed foods, caffeine, fizzy drinks, and dairy can all kind of trigger inflammation in the joints and aggravate joint pain. Other things is having a kind of high acidity in our diet won't help our joints either. So if you're doing those things, it might be an idea for a few weeks to maybe just change your diet slightly and see if that makes a difference. And then start to think about adding like anti-inflammatory foods every day. This is what we talk about when we talk about these daily habits, because if we just do it without thinking, it just becomes part of life. And I've more recently found that things that make food taste nice are actually really good for us. Adding so many more herbs and spices, we all know the kind of things that are good for us. Your ginger, your turmeric, garlic, your broccoli, your oily fish, raspberries, loads and loads of herbs and spices, all your coriander, parsley, all those kind of things have got massive, powerful antioxidants and anti-inflammatory foods in them. And that's a lot of the things I say to my clients is, when you're thinking about your diet, a lot of people go, oh, I won't be able to eat that and have that anymore. And actually, it's about adding in as opposed to taking away initially, and starting to get those things in, because they will make us feel better. So all of those things can help. And if you are experiencing joint pain, and you've still got these kind of things in your diet, it would be one thing that I would look at. The Mediterranean diet has been proven to help with your liver and joint and systemic inflammation. So increasing healthy fats or omega-3 fats, eating more beans, a good olive oil. Also, you might consider juicing, just to get the good things into your diet. So just really considering adding things into your food that can help with that, your inflammation. What next? Sleep. Oh, we love to sleep, don't we? And it's one of those things that's notoriously poor for women in menopause, and they don't really make a connection on bad sleep and weight gain, bad sleep and moods, bad sleep and joint pain, and bad sleep and fatigue. It's huge. And if your sleep is not very good and you're not getting a solid kind of 7 to 8 hours a night, and you normally did, I would definitely start here. Just focus on sleeping well, because so many other things will slot into place if you can focus on the sleep. There's some research that's proved that sleep deprivation increases our sensitivity to pain. So that might also not help with how you're feeling. At night when we sleep, there are two kind of hormones that are responsible for repair as we sleep. One is human growth hormone, which naturally declines as we age, but also this is what we need as we sleep, and insulin growth factor 1. And when sleep's disturbed, then these hormones tend to remain low. And honestly, we really want these. Human growth hormone is amazing for the hair, for the bones, for the skin. Gives you that glow. It's obviously the thing that kids have a lot of because they're growing. So sleep disruption affects those kind of hormone, all the things that help us to heal and repair while we're asleep. So really, really important that we sleep to help heal any of these kind of traumas that we have going on in our joints. So I would say if you are exercising to a high, not necessarily high intensity, but high impact, a lot of running, pounding, jumping, those kind of things, I would back off for a while, especially if you're not sleeping well. And also just to see if that makes a difference. So nobody's saying you can never do it again, but it's like anything. If something's injured, we need to give it a chance to, to heal and repair, so that we can then start to bring new things back in. And I will go into obviously a lot more detail about the exercises in a minute. So, and I think that many women don't link the having sore joints and muscles with lack of sleep. So I think it's really, really important that it's one of those things that we can look at. So I think we need to limit those kind of high impact exercises, the ones that involve a lot of pounding and jumping, especially if you're not sleeping well. High intensity exercise in the evenings will also affect your sleep. So what happens when we exercise, it is a stress on the body. It's a physical stress on the body. In kind of like the olden days, your body would have thought you were running after your dinner. And so all the cortisol comes out. And if you're doing that quite late at night, if your bedtime is 10:30, 11 o'clock, and you're going and doing some high intensity exercise at say 8 and not finishing till 9, that could be one of the reasons why you're not sleeping well as well, because you're just pumping more cortisol through your body, and you're feeling wired. I feel after I've done a workout, I really don't feel like I want to go to sleep. So, but if that's the only time you get to do anything, then you could think about switching it for something else. So maybe doing your high intensity stuff earlier on in the day, and maybe doing a bit of yoga, Pilates, things that are a bit more calming in the evening. So as it says here, we don't want to be sedentary either, because as I mentioned earlier, we want to actually keep those joints moving. We want to keep that synovial fluid moving. We want to keep those joints nice and juicy. So I would, if you're experiencing especially pain in the hips and the knees, and you're doing that kind of high impact exercise, just back off for a little while, a few weeks. Start with 4 weeks, see if that works. Maybe move it to 6. But it's just, obviously it's trial and error, trying to look at all of these things that we've talked about. So I feel like I'm talking really, really fast. I probably am, aren't I? Time's it. Oh, doing okay. Okay, so what can we do to help? I think that question really is for you to think also, have you made a connection yet? Have you thought about the water, the hydration, the sleep, the food, the exercise, what time you're doing the exercise, and thought of something that you can, basically start doing? So let's go through a little few things that we can do. So drinking more water, at least 1.5 to 2 liters a day, not including that tea and coffee. Having a bit more of a Mediterranean style diet, really good oils, good fish, omega-3s, and that's where when we look at supplements to our diet, as in food supplements, I don't particularly like mackerel and sardines and all that kind of stuff. I eat salmon and that's all. So I try and up my omega-3 with the flaxseed and those kind of things, but I have a supplement, don't take it every day. I probably take some omegas when I would have eaten some oily fish or some anchovies instead. But it's, it is a good thing to have, depending on obviously what your diet's like. I wish I loved them because they're so easy to buy, the kind of tin sardines, stuff like that, but I can't do it. So upping your anti-inflammatory and antioxidants, to think about extra virgin olive oil can help to reduce inflammation. One of the key antioxidants is olecanthanol, which has been shown to work similarly to ibuprofen, which is obviously an anti-inflammatory drug. So maybe having that every day. If you eat salads, just make a dressing out of olive oil, bit of lemon juice, or apple cider vinegar, those kind of things. Back off, as I said, on the high kind of proteins and the acidics, especially the red meats, if you're having joint pain, and especially while you're trying to heal and repair. And I'm not saying don't eat a juicy steak again if that's your deal, but just try for a few weeks if you are having and experiencing these pains, to tweak for a while just to see if that's making a difference, and then you can start to bring those things back in as you're feeling better. Improving sleep. So I could do a whole thing on sleep. So turning around something called your circadian rhythms is amazingly helpful to get you to sleep well. And really, the circadian rhythms, everybody thinks, oh, it's just about falling asleep, and it's not. It's about your whole body is on a circadian rhythm. So your temperature will be on a circadian rhythm. Your organs are all on a circadian rhythm. Your blood pressure will be on a circadian rhythm. So if you find that you wake up in the morning with anxiety, that could be something to do with the timing and what's going on with your blood pressure. They tend to have a spike sometime in the morning and another one in the evening. Same with body temperature. So you might find that you get hot flashes if you get them at certain times of the day. There's so much going on with circadian rhythms, but what's really important is that you try and get natural light in your eyes sometime in the mornings into something called the pineal gland in the eyes. Take your specs off if you wear glasses. Try and get that natural light in 10 minutes. That's all it is in the morning. Just to kind of reset the body and say, right, it's morning now. And similarly, in the evenings, we can start to dim the lights. We talk about hormones a lot, don't we? But another hormone called melatonin starts to be produced at night. Melatonin is also on a circadian rhythm, and we want that to be. It starts to be produced at around 8 or 9 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And basically, if your cortisol is high, your melatonin will be low. They have this seesaw effect. So melatonin can't be produced when cortisol is high, vice versa, which is why the exercise in the evening really affects sleep, because the melatonin can't be produced when cortisol's there. So think about dimming the lights from like 8 p.m. Don't be on a screen like me at the moment. Start to think about some mindfulness things, deep breaths, having some yoga stretches or any stretches. It doesn't really matter. Whatever's painful in your joints, stretch them, whether it's the hips or the knees or the shoulders. A few stretches can help as well before bed. So if you're not sleeping well, as I said, start thinking about reducing that intense impact exercise for about 6 weeks. So I know that exercising is probably kind of the last thing that you want to do when your joints feel achy and sore, but staying active is very important because it does help to increase the strength and the flexibility of your joints, as well as the muscle that surrounds the joints. But it doesn't mean that you have to spend loads and loads of time in the gym. Okay. So going into exercise, to heal our joints, we need to do some kind of stimulation to allow like new forms to grow. And it sounds really awful, but you have to damage a muscle for it to repair, and then it gets stronger. And that's why strength training becomes really important as we get older, and stimulating our joints and our muscles. Strength training is important, and our cells need to be stimulated to be allowed to grow and repair. And remember that if you're in pain, then our joints will need healing. And if we have problems with cells that are inflamed, we need to stimulate new cells to be produced to replace the old ones that are there. And our cellular renewal is slower as we age. Everything's slower as we age. So if you are medically cleared to do some kind of exercise and training, I would do some strength training, and this will make sure that you're stimulating that joint tissue. And so weight bearing exercises are what we need to be looking at. And this will help to protect our bone mineral density as we age. It will also help to build muscle, which starts to decline from the age of 30. This will also take pressure off your joints. So if you're stiff around the hips, then start to focus on strengthening the muscles around the hip and the knee joints, as these are kind of the areas that support the whole body. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to join a gym. I would use non-impact weight exercises first, and begin with body weight, and I would begin with twice a week. It's kind of simple body weight exercises. Doesn't have to be anything more than half an hour, but making sure that we're using that to strengthen those joints. And once you're happy using body weight, and you feel that it's getting a little bit easier, you can obviously move up to using weights, whether that's hand weights, barbells, kettlebells. I love a kettlebell. Kettlebells are my favorite. But really good kind of non-weight bearing exercises to begin with if you're in healing are things like swimming, aqua aerobics, if it's back on now, that's really good. Cycling is also really good for joints and things like that, but really good obviously for the heart and gets the heart going. We've got those low impact weight bearing exercises which we can use, such as walking, low impact aerobics, so not jumping. Dancing is a really good one. And we can use the kind of resistant non-impact exercises like our Pilates and yoga. It also, I just want to say this, it's also kind of really important to warm up probably for longer as we get older before our exercises. We need a little bit longer to warm our joints as we get older. So, if you're a jogger and a runner, I would just cut back on that kind of high impact exercise for a while, especially on hard roads, because that can exasperate our joint pain. Also, the jumping. So, in contrast, our low impact kind of non-weight bearing exercises can be gentler on the joint, but they can help to build that strength around that joint, help to build the muscle, which will help the joint. And also it will all help to increase that range of motion. You know, if we've got sticky joints and they're not moving as well as they can, incorporating flexibility work, mobility work, non-impact work, stretching into your exercise plan is also a really, really good option. As I said, I'm not going to go hugely into supplements, but as we mentioned, omega-3, the oils, if you don't get too much in your diet, then you might want to look at getting a really good omega-3 supplement. Vitamin D levels, if you're concerned, maybe get them checked. It's really cheap. I think I had mine done recently, paid about £27. They don't tend to do it much at the doctors, so I just went and got mine done. Getting out in the sun, of course, which now in the UK is very easy. And magnesium, about 300 milligrams a day, can also help with joints as well. And we need to think about our fat-soluble vitamins, our vitamin D, E, A, and K. All those kind of 4 nutrients are vital for joints and for our tendons. And the muscles, of course, needing that magnesium, and also B vitamins as well. And I'm just going to kind of put this out there, but I've been doing quite a lot of research recently on feet and looking at something called grounding or earthing. People call it different things. Can also help to reduce blood pressure and inflammation. It's all about connecting with the earth, and your feet will be soaking up like millions of electrons, and these electrons intercept our free radicals, you know, these things that are kind of roaming around our body that we don't want to roam around our body, causing havoc. The other thing is really strengthening the feet can really help with hips and core strength. I think we spend a lot of time in shoes. So if you're going to do some of the non-impact exercises, it's a really good idea to have barefoot or wear barefoot shoes. You know, I'm not saying go out and spend a fortune on these things, because there's a lot that you can do at home where you don't need to wear anything on your feet at all. But we weren't really made to wear shoes all day, especially ones that squash your toes together and don't allow blood flow to the feet. And also eventually will start to affect our balance and our core and our posture, which becomes really, really important. So with little things like maybe, you know, doing 2 or 3 things in a morning. You can walk outside, put your feet on the ground, look at let the light come into your eyes while you're drinking your water, because it's all going to lubricate. So all of those things are going to be brilliant for you. So trying to connect to the earth's surface, trying to do things in bare feet a little bit more, and this will strengthen the knees and the tendons and our posture, help with our walking. Try and get away a little bit from the Wi-Fi and have a little bit of time away from stuff, you know, to reduce this free radical activity that's just around us all the time.
There is one question just popped up. Do you mean keeping hydrated by literally drinking just water?
Yeah.
Or is it okay to have ginger or something in there? Do you want me to take that while you have a
you take that while I have a drink of my water?
Yeah, Catherine, it's absolutely fine. I appreciate not everyone likes the taste of water or wants something a little bit different. So it's absolutely fine to put something else in there. The main thing is that you're not drinking sugary drinks or caffeinated drinks. So water with some ginger, a slice of lemon, cucumber, put it in there, herbal teas, that kind of thing. All of that counts towards your hydration. So it doesn't just need to be straight out of the tap or out of the filter. Ideally, you can put anything else in there that you want to as well.
I put lemon in mine. I love it.
Yeah, no, and I think at this time of year as well, it's nice to have something a bit refreshing.
Yes.
We might not be drinking a lot of herbal teas, but I quite like to make some of the herbal teas and then just cool them down to make like an iced tea as well. Stick some ice cubes in it and drink it that way. Is another.
That's a good idea. I never thought that.
To have it. So yeah, so that's the questions that we had in there outstanding.
you go, Catherine. Do you want to take that one? Is taking a good collagen supplement daily okay?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you want to get a good quality collagen supplement.
Mm.
You might not necessarily need it. I think it's always worth having a bit of a consultation with someone, speaking to someone like Jackie about it. But yeah, collagen can be really, really helpful. The other thing to note is that your body will make collagen. One thing that specifically it needs to do so is vitamin C as well. So that's the other thing to think about taking alongside. But collagen can be really helpful, yeah, for joint health. Absolutely, it can. It's really good as well for digestive health. And I mean, Jackie didn't have time really to go into too much on the dietary side of it, but digestive health is an area where we can have a lot of underlying inflammation, which may not cause us too many problems until we reach that point that the estrogen levels are going and we're losing that natural anti-inflammatory, and then it can rear its head. So again, collagen can be really good for supporting digestion, and that in turn will help to reduce that inflammation as well as increase uptake of the nutrients that you are eating in your diet. So collagen can be lovely. If you don't want to take it as a supplement, you could do a bone broth as well. I'm a big fan of these kind of traditional foods. So using, the leftover roast chicken carcass to make a nice bone stock, and then using that in soups or sauces and that kind of thing. A good nutritious bone broth, for example, is going to add more than just the collagen. It's got lots of other lovely nutrients in there, and really putting in different foods, healthy fats. Yeah.
Thanks, Catherine. That's really, really good to hear. I think we might be done. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.